All the way back in May of this year, 2024, I had a psychotic episode. I was having some rather nasty delusions of not only a religious nature, but also there was this sense of impending doom that I would no longer be here when I'm 31. Scary stuff. But thankfully, medication exists, and my doctor raised the dose of the medication that's supposed to fix this kind of thing. He actually doubled it, and it got rid of the episode as intended. But there's more to the story, meaning that since that doubling, my dose has changed again, which is actually normal. So today I want to talk about the compromise I've had to make in the meantime, because I made a video about what it was like in the first few months after it was doubled. I covered how I had less desires to spend money and that my psychosis had gone down, but I also mentioned that I was having increased amounts of extrapyramidal symptoms, plus a few other things. But now I want to talk about what I've noticed after 5 months of being on that dose, and then speak on a recent adjustment that my NP and I made as a result of those things. Taking antipsychotics is a constant balance between benefits and drawbacks, of pros and cons, of side effects and therapeutic effects. It's hard to put it plainly, and you'll see that too by the end of this video. So, let's dive into it. The antipsychotic I take is called Zyprexa. It's also called olanzapine, and it's a medication that saved my life all the way back in 2018. And I've been on several different dosages for several different reasons over the years. At one point I tried to switch to a different antipsychotic, and that was a train wreck. But I've been on Zyprexa for about 6 years, which is wild to me. However, there is something we need to talk about when it comes to meds and dosages. Because when it comes to psychiatric medications, oftentimes people don't stay on one dose the entire time, which is one of the reasons I don't mention dosages of the medications I take in videos anymore, because they change so much. And that's just the reality for many of us. But anyways, when it comes to psych meds, there are dosages for maintenance and dosages for episodes. Maintenance doses are taken to prevent relapse. And usually this is where people hang out for months to years at a time, because some people, with the help of medication, go years in between episodes. And the maintenance dose is what they take to keep those episodes away. It's usually lower than the dose used to treat episodes. And how much constitutes a maintenance dose varies from person to person, which is yet another reason I'm not specifying dosages in this video, because my maintenance dose might not be the same as someone else's. But when it comes to treating episodes, things can get a little more intense. For me, my maintenance dose for a long time was half the dose I took for my most recent episode. Like I said in the beginning of this video, my doctor doubled my dose in order to knock out the nasty psychotic episode I was having, and it worked. And for a lot of people, the dose to treat episodes is higher, sometimes much higher, like in my case. People typically only stay on that higher dose for about 6 months, and then once that 6 months is over, they drop back down to the preferred maintenance dose, which might even be the exact same dose they were on before the episode set in. It's actually a great system because this means that someone doesn't have to go on a new medication when episodes hit. They can just raise the medication that already works, keep it up for about 6 months, and then when 6 months is up, they can drop back down to the preferred maintenance dose, which is about where I am. I recently hit the 5-month mark, so I knew I was getting closer to the time where I could drop back down. But I was kind of doing really well on the higher dose when it came to the schizophrenia and bipolar symptoms. I was experiencing less delusions and hallucinations for one, and a reduction in mood symptoms was also observed. It was great. I was still experiencing dystonia, however, that nasty extrapyramidal symptom that I hate so much. It came in the form of unwanted throat and jaw tenses, along with some rather unwanted body jerks. However, this was tolerable, so I was okay, even though it was kind of messing with my quality of life a bit. But there's always a trade-off when it comes to psych meds, so at the time, that was mine. But I had one other thing that wasn't good. Something that took me a little bit more time to notice. Something that prompted the creation of this video. And it's that I was having increased symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a disorder I also have but don't talk about much. And a lot of that disorder and my experience with it came from going on Zyprexa. Zyprexa is known to make OCD symptoms worse or cause them outright. Search PubMed and you'll find countless papers describing this phenomenon. But when it came to my own OCD symptoms, Zyprexa definitely made them worse. A lot worse. And the higher the dose, the more difficult it gets, which is where I was, unfortunately. It took time for the effects to be noticed, but by that 5th month, I was checking and rechecking most of the outlets in my apartment before I left for work, because I was terrified if I left certain things plugged in that the whole entire house would burn down. And I also had an intrusive thought that in the middle of the night, I would sleepwalk and plug in things that shouldn't have been plugged in. So I had to check every single morning, multiple times, before I left for work to make sure everything was okay. I also obsessively checked the stove and worried about my computer charger causing problems. Things like that. that was my life. Now, I want to say a little bit of checking is normal. In terms of therapy, I'm allowed to check everything once before I leave in the morning. But things that I was supposed to only do one time, I was doing multiple times, which was a problem. It was not a fun period in my life. And I didn't even realize that this is what was going on until my provider connected the dots for me. So with my dose being higher, I was having more OCD symptoms and it was messing with my quality of life. But in order to reduce it, I had to reduce the medication, which meant I would be facing the reality of more psychotic and mood symptoms, aka the whole reason I take the medication in the first place. So it's a rock and a hard place. Live in a world where I have to check and recheck every outlet in my apartment because I'm afraid it'll burn down while I'm at work, or get more voices, delusions, and maybe even mood symptoms. And that's a hard call, because even if my voices are mostly positive, they're still only mostly positive. I will still get negative ones, and I don't like those very much. And any delusion is a bad delusion for me. So once again, it's a tough decision. What ended up happening is, let's say my dose for treating episodes is 100%. And before the episode, I was taking 50%. Well, now I'm taking the in-between at 75%. That's the adjustment. And I've been on that 75% for a while now, more than a few weeks, so I've been able to see the effects. And the effects are I check things less, which is so nice. I'm back to doing everything only once. And the dystonia is also down a bit, which is great. The full body jerks that I was dealing with while I was trying to go to sleep have also mostly gone away as well. Meaning I don't remember the last time they happened. And I do have more hallucinations, yes, but they're manageable. And honestly, sometimes I don't mind having a friend to talk to. No delusions or mood symptoms yet, which is good so far. But I have only recently dropped the dose at this point, so we'll have to see. And I want to mention that the last time I had a dose change with Zyprexa, aka when it was doubled, I noticed it was harder to focus on things for long periods of time, like working on the channel, for instance. But I feel like now I've been able to go back to the way things were before the great doubling, which is a blessing, honestly. It makes it easier to work on things. But that's what happened. We lowered the dose and the OCD went down. And the dystonia going down was a nice side effect too. But I am hearing more voices. And maybe I'm okay with this. Maybe I'm okay with having less symptoms of the bad stuff and more symptoms of the tolerable stuff. Because I can tolerate the voices for the most part. And even some minor mood swings if those decide to show their face the longer this dose change goes on. Because that's the balance. What can I tolerate for the maximum therapeutic effect? I will probably never get a psych med where everything is positive. So it's always a trade-off. And at this point, I'm okay with it. I really am. So I think I'll talk to my nurse practitioner about staying on the 75%, even though we talked about dropping back down to the 50%. Because what I'm experiencing on the 75% is manageable. As much as I loved how I felt on the 50%, meaning less OCD mainly, the 75% seems it might be the sweet spot. At least for now. But times always change, and my dose will probably change over time as well. So my question to you is, if you take psych meds, what's your trade-off? What do you need to tolerate to get the results you need? This is mine. What's yours? And if you too take Zyprexa and have some OCD symptoms, do let me know in the comments, because I'm curious. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me and making the uncomfortable comfortable. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.